90 days ago, I had $11,847 in credit card debt, a savings account with $412 in it, and a Spotify premium subscription that I was apparently still paying for even though I'd been using the free version for 6 months. Then I did something that half of personal finance YouTube told me was genius, and the other half told me was financial malpractice. I went full Dave Ramsey. The envelope system, the debt snowball, the rice and beans, all of it. I cut up 2 credit cards on camera, which, by the way, felt way more dramatic than it needed to. And now, 90 days later, I'm going to show you exactly what happened to my bank account. The number surprised me, but not for the reason you might think. Dave Ramsey is arguably the most influential personal finance voice in America. His radio show reaches 18 million listeners weekly. The Total Money Makeover has sold over 10 million copies. His Financial Peace University has been taken by over 10 million people, often through church programs. When you search "how to get out of debt" on Google, Dave Ramsey content dominates the first page. He's built a $250 million empire telling people to stop being stupid with money. His words, not mine. And here's the thing. His audience loves him with an intensity that borders on religious, because, well, for many of them, it literally is religious. His program is explicitly Christian, and his advice comes wrapped in moral framing about discipline, sacrifice, and personal responsibility, which is either inspiring or off-putting depending on your perspective. But here's what I wanted to know, and what I couldn't find a straight answer to anywhere online. Does the actual method work? Not does it work for some people, or does it work in theory? Does it work when someone with real debt, real bills, and a real allergy to rice and beans actually tries it for 90 days? So I became that someone. The internet has 2 camps on Dave Ramsey, and they both annoy me equally. Camp 1 is the Dave Ramsey disciples. These are people who will tell you that the debt snowball changed their life, that Dave saved their marriage, that rice and beans for 18 months was totally worth it because now they're debt-free and screaming about it on his show. They treat any criticism of Dave as a personal attack. You point out that the debt avalanche saves more money mathematically, and they respond like you just insulted their grandmother. Camp 2 is the finance optimization crowd. These are the credit card churners, the index fund purists, the people who will tell you that paying off a 4% car loan before maxing out your Roth IRA is literally burning money. They think Dave Ramsey is for financial children who can't handle the responsibility of a rewards credit card. They make spreadsheets for fun. I respect them, but I don't trust anyone who makes spreadsheets for fun. Here's what neither camp acknowledges. Personal finance is personal. A strategy that's mathematically optimal doesn't matter if you don't stick to it. And a strategy that's psychologically effective doesn't matter if it costs you thousands in unnecessary interest. So I stopped listening to both camps and decided to just run the experiment myself. 90 days, full Dave Ramsey. Let's see what happens. Let me show you exactly where I started so we're working with real numbers. Day 1, I had $11,847 in total debt. That broke down to $4,200 on a Chase Sapphire card at 24.99% APR. Yes, I know, that's basically loan shark territory. And yes, I did originally get it for the travel points that I never actually used. I had $3,100 on a Citi Double Cash card at 18.99% APR. And I had $4,547 remaining on a car loan at 6.9% APR. My savings account had $412, my checking account had roughly $1,100, which sounds fine until you realize rent was due in 4 days. My take-home pay at the time was $4,340 per month. My fixed expenses, rent, utilities, car insurance, phone, minimum debt payments, totaled about $2,850. That left me with $1,490 in discretionary income each month, which historically had been going to food, entertainment, more food, and whatever random Amazon purchase seemed essential at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Spoiler, it was never essential. Dave Ramsey's program is built around 7 baby steps, and the first one is simple. Save $1,000 as fast as possible. This is your starter emergency fund. It's not meant to cover every possible disaster. It's meant to stop you from going deeper into debt when your tire blows out or your dog eats something expensive. Getting to $1,000 was supposed to be the easy part. It was not the easy part. I started by doing what Dave calls gazelle intensity, which is his way of saying act like a predator is chasing you. I sold things. A guitar I hadn't touched in 3 years, $180 on Facebook Marketplace. Some old textbooks I'd been telling myself I'd reference someday, $67 on eBay. I canceled subscriptions I'd forgotten about. The aforementioned Spotify Premium, $11.99, a meditation app I'd used exactly twice, $14.99, and a cloud storage plan that was backing up photos I could have just kept on my phone, $2.99. That's $29.97 per month I was lighting on fire every 30 days. In 2 weeks between selling things and cutting subscriptions, I had scraped together $589. Combined with my existing $412, I crossed the $1,000 emergency fund threshold on day 16. Baby step 1 complete. Here's my first observation, and it's uncomfortable. I had been telling myself for over a year that I couldn't save money, that I was living paycheck to paycheck, that there was no room in my budget. And yet, within 2 weeks, I found $1,000 by simply paying attention. That guitar was sitting in my closet. That Spotify subscription was sitting in my bank statement. The money was there, I just wasn't looking. Now for the controversial part. Baby step 2 is paying off all debt except your mortgage using the debt snowball method. Here's how it works. You list your debts from smallest balance to largest, regardless of interest rate. You pay minimums on everything except the smallest debt, which you attack with every extra dollar you have. When that one's paid off, you roll that payment into the next smallest, and so on. The snowball grows. Now, the finance optimization crowd hates this, and mathematically, they're correct. The debt avalanche method, paying off highest interest rate first, will always save you more money in interest over time. Always. I ran the numbers on my own debt. Using the avalanche method, I would pay approximately $1,847 in total interest before becoming debt-free. Using the snowball method, I would pay approximately $2,134 in total interest. That's a $287 difference. So why would anyone use the snowball? Because humans aren't spreadsheets. A 2016 study published in the Journal of Consumer Research tracked over 6,000 people paying off debt and found that those who paid off small balances first were significantly more likely to eliminate their total debt. Not because of math, but because of psychology. Each small win releases dopamine. Each paid-off account feels like progress. And that emotional momentum keeps people going when the math alone wouldn't. Dave Ramsey understands something the spreadsheet crowd often ignores. Behavior change is harder than arithmetic. The best plan you abandon is worse than the imperfect plan you complete. So I did the snowball. My smallest debt was technically my car loan at $4,547. But since the Citi card at $3,100 was all credit card debt and felt more urgent psychologically, I made a judgment call and started there. Some Dave purists would say I did it wrong. I think Dave would probably be fine with it. Either way, I attacked that Citi card like it owed me money, which technically it did, in reverse. Here's where Dave Ramsey gets really old school. He recommends using cash envelopes for variable spending categories. You withdraw physical cash at the beginning of the month, divide it into envelopes labeled groceries, gas, entertainment, and so on. And when an envelope is empty, you stop spending in that category. No exceptions. No, I'll just borrow from next month. Empty means empty. I set up 4 envelopes. Groceries, $300, gas, $120, entertainment, $50, miscellaneous, $80. That's $550 total for the month in variable spending. Everything else went to debt. And yes, I did the rice and beans thing. Not literally every meal, I'm not a monster, but I dramatically cut my food spending. Meal prepped on Sundays, stopped ordering delivery, which alone saved me roughly $180 a month based on my previous bank statements. I learned to cook things that weren't just pasta with whatever's in the fridge, though there was still plenty of that.
The envelope system worked better than I expected. There's something psychologically different about handing over physical cash versus tapping a card. When I paid $47 for groceries and watched the bills leave my envelope, I felt it. When I tap a credit card, I feel nothing. That's not an accident. Credit card companies have spent billions engineering that disconnect. The envelope system reestablishes the pain of spending, and that pain, it turns out, is useful. By the end of month 1, I had thrown $1,340 at my Citi card beyond the minimum payment. Balance went from $3,100 to $1,760. I was ahead of schedule. Now, if this were a guru video, this is where I tell you everything went perfectly and I'm now debt-free and screaming on Dave's show. But this isn't a guru video. This is what actually happened. Week 6, my car needed new brakes. $380. This is exactly why Baby Step 1 exists. I paid it from my $1,000 emergency fund, which dropped to $620. Dave's rule is that when you dip into the emergency fund, you pause debt payoff and refill it immediately. So I did. It took me almost 2 weeks to get back to $1,000, which meant 2 weeks of minimum payments only on my debt. It felt like losing momentum, because it was.
Week 9, a friend's wedding. Out of state. I had committed to this months before my Dave Ramsey experiment, and backing out wasn't an option. Or at least, it wasn't an option I was willing to take. Flight, hotel, gift, and incidentals came to $610. I rated my envelopes, cut my grocery budget to $180 for the month, and still had to dip $200 into savings. This was the low point. I was eating actual rice and beans, not metaphorically, and questioning whether this whole thing was worth it. Week 11, my phone screen cracked. Of course it did. The universe has a sense of timing. Repair cost? $89. At this point, I laughed because what else can you do? I paid it, refilled the emergency fund again, and kept going. Here's what these setbacks taught me, and I think this is the most valuable part of the whole experiment. Life doesn't pause while you pay off debt. Emergencies don't wait until you're financially stable to show up. The Dave Ramsey system accounts for this with the emergency fund. But what it doesn't fully prepare you for is the emotional toll of constantly refilling that fund while watching your debt payoff slow down. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, over and over. And you have to be okay with that, or you'll quit. Day 90. Let's look at the numbers. Starting debt, $11,847. Ending debt, $7,412. Total debt paid off, $4,435 in 90 days. That's an average of $1,478 per month going toward debt, compared to roughly $400 in minimum payments I was making before. The Citi card is completely gone, paid off on day 52. I actually did a little fist pump alone in my apartment. No one saw it, it still felt good. The Chase Sapphire went from $4,200 to $2,965. Still painful, still at 24.99% APR, but the balance is moving in the right direction. The car loan is untouched at $4,447 because I've been focusing on the credit cards first. Savings account, $1,000 exactly. I rebuilt it 3 times over 90 days. It's annoying, but it's there. Here's the number that surprised me most. My credit score went from $641 to $687. That's a 46-point jump in 3 months. Paying down credit card balances reduced my utilization ratio from 68% to 31%, which is apparently the main thing credit scores actually care about. I wasn't trying to improve my credit score. Dave Ramsey famously doesn't care about credit scores, but it happened anyway as a side effect of paying down debt. Let me be honest about what worked. The psychological framework is genuinely effective. Having a clear, sequential plan reduced my decision fatigue to nearly zero. I didn't have to think about which debt to pay or how much to save. The system told me. That clarity is underrated. When you're stressed about money, the last thing you need is more decisions. The envelope system changed my spending behavior in ways I didn't expect. I'm now viscerally aware of how much things cost in a way I wasn't before. That $7 latte isn't just $7, it's 2.3% of my monthly grocery envelope. That reframing sticks with you.
The gazelle intensity mindset, treating debt like an emergency, created urgency that I'd never had before. I'd been casually paying minimums for years, vaguely hoping the debt would disappear. It wasn't disappearing, it was growing. Dave's framework made me treat debt like the financial emergency it actually is. And the community aspect matters. I didn't join Financial Peace University, but I did find online communities of people doing the same thing. There's accountability in shared struggle. There's motivation in watching other people succeed. The Dave Ramsey ecosystem, whatever you think of its politics or religious framing, has built something that keeps people engaged. That's not nothing.
Now, let me be equally honest about the problems, because there are real problems, and the Dave Ramsey community doesn't like talking about them. First, the math actually does matter. Remember that $287 difference between snowball and avalanche I mentioned? That's my situation with relatively small debts. For someone with $50,000 in student loans at varying interest rates, the difference can be $2,000 or more. At some point, the psychological benefit of small wins doesn't justify leaving thousands of dollars on the table. Dave's blanket advice doesn't account for individual circumstances, and his dismissal of the avalanche method as spreadsheet nerd stuff is frankly irresponsible. Both methods work. The best one depends on your psychology and your numbers. Second, the investment advice is genuinely bad. Dave Ramsey claims the stock market returns 12% annually on average. This is creative accounting. The actual inflation-adjusted average return of the S&P 500 is closer to 7%. He uses this inflated number to justify his advice against paying off your mortgage early and his optimistic retirement projections. When people follow his retirement calculator, they may end up undersaving by hundreds of thousands of dollars. A 2019 analysis by financial planner Michael Kitces found that using a 12% assumption instead of a realistic 7% assumption could leave retirees with 40% less money than they expected. That's not a rounding error. That's a retirement crisis. Third, the credit card absolutism doesn't work for everyone. Dave says cut up all credit cards, never use them again, credit scores are fake, and cash is king. And for people with genuine spending addiction issues, that's probably good advice. But for people who can use credit cards responsibly, paying the full balance monthly, never carrying interest, credit cards offer fraud protection, purchase protection, and yes, rewards that have real value. I earned $340 in cash back last year, before my experiment, on spending I would have done anyway. Dave would say I'm playing with snakes. I'd say I'm using a tool as intended. The nuance matters. Fourth, the income side is underemphasized. The Dave Ramsey program is almost entirely about cutting expenses and managing behavior. And that's important. You can't out-earn stupid spending, but there's relatively little focus on increasing income through negotiation, skill development, or career advancement. For someone making $35,000 a year with $80,000 in student loans, all the rice and beans in the world won't solve the fundamental math problem. Sometimes the answer isn't spend less. Sometimes the answer is earn more. Dave's program doesn't really address that, possibly because get a better job is harder to systematize than use cash envelopes. Fifth, and this one is personal, the moral framing can be toxic. Dave frequently uses words like stupid, immature, and childish to describe people in debt. His program frames financial struggles as primarily behavioral and moral failures. And while personal responsibility matters, this framing ignores systemic issues: stagnant wages, predatory lending, healthcare costs, housing inflation that put millions of Americans in debt through no fault of their own. A medical emergency shouldn't be a moral failing. A job loss during a recession isn't immaturity. The "you're broke because you're dumb" messaging might motivate some people, but it shames others into silence and self-blame. I don't think that's helpful. So, after 90 days, here's my honest assessment of who Dave Ramsey works for and who should probably look elsewhere. Dave Ramsey is excellent for people who have a spending problem they can't seem to control. If you've tried budgeting apps, if you've tried just being more careful and you're still swiping the card for things you don't need,
The envelope system and the cold turkey credit card elimination might be exactly the behavioral reset you need. The system is designed for people who need external structure because internal discipline hasn't worked. Dave Ramsey is excellent for people who are overwhelmed and don't know where to start. The baby steps are simple. They're sequential. They remove decision fatigue. If you're paralyzed by the complexity of personal finance, should I invest? Should I pay debt? Should I save? Dave gives you a clear answer. Do this first, then this, then this. That clarity has real value. Dave Ramsey is excellent for people who respond well to community and accountability. Financial Peace University, the Facebook groups, the debt-free screams on the radio show, these create a culture of support that helps people stick with the program. If you're motivated by shared struggle and public commitment, this ecosystem delivers. Dave Ramsey is probably not for you if you're already financially disciplined but carrying strategic debt. If you have a 3% car loan and you're deciding between paying it off early versus investing in index funds averaging 7%, the math says invest. Dave would say pay off the car. He's optimizing for behavior, you might be optimizing for returns. Know which game you're playing. Dave Ramsey is probably not for you if his communication style triggers shame rather than motivation. Some people hear "stop being stupid" and get fired up to change. Other people hear it and spiral into self-loathing that makes their financial behavior worse, not better. Know yourself. There are other programs, Ramit Sethi, The Financial Diet, various others that deliver similar information without the moral judgment. Dave Ramsey is probably not for you if you have complex financial situations involving business ownership, significant investments, or high income. The baby steps are designed for the median American household. If you're dealing with equity compensation, rental properties, or business cash flow, you need advice more tailored than a one-size-fits-all radio show. So here's where I land after 90 days, $4,435 in paid-off debt, and more rice and beans than I ever wanted to eat. Dave Ramsey's program works. Not because it's mathematically optimal, it's not. Not because Dave himself is always right, he's frequently not. It works because it's simple, it's structured, and it accounts for the fact that humans are emotional creatures who make irrational decisions with money. I'm not a Dave Ramsey disciple now. I still think his investment advice is dangerously optimistic. I still think his credit card absolutism is overkill for disciplined people. I still think the moral shaming is unnecessary and sometimes harmful. But I also have $4,435 less debt than I did 3 months ago. My emergency fund exists. My credit score jumped 46 points. And I now have a relationship with money that I didn't have before, one based on awareness rather than avoidance. Would I recommend trying it? Yeah, actually, with caveats. Take the behavioral framework, take the envelope system, take the debt snowball if you need the psychological wins, but verify the investment math yourself. Keep a credit card if you can trust yourself with it, and maybe mute the parts where a millionaire calls you stupid for struggling in an economy designed to keep you struggling. The balance after 90 days? $7,413 remaining, down from $11,847. At this pace, I'll be debt-free in about 5 more months. I'll keep you updated, and I'll probably keep eating rice and beans. Not because Dave told me to, but because, honestly, I've gotten pretty good at making it.